street type of thing, you know. So
Right. House of Pain was linked to Cypress Hill. Is this where you met the guys from House of Pain, and how did you become their manager or start managing?
well, I had known him before, you know, being a part of the hip hop scene in LA is small. Like I said, I worked with Ice-T through Water the Bush and stuff like that. And, you know, Everlast was signed to Rhyme Syndicate. And it's funny, there was a joke that people used to say in LA, no disrespect to Everlast, but it was just kind of funny. People used to say, because of the way Ice-T had marketed him, they said first he came out as a cholo, then he came out as a Italian gangster, and now he's Irish with House of Pain. Because on one of the Rhyme Syndicate albums, he's dressed like a cholo, and one of them, I guess he's kind of like an Italian mobster. They didn't know how to market white rappers back then. You know what I mean? Because it was like not cool to be white and be a rapper yet. There weren't enough like white girls to jump on the train and be like, oh, we love him or whatever. So most of the rap fans were looking at you sideways. So they were trying to figure out some like interesting way to do it, you know. So I knew them, and what happened was we were, you know, Cypress Hill was signed, and it took a little while for them to blow up. And they had House of Pain was already, demo was done, but wasn't much attention being paid to it in the Cypress Hill camp or anything, because they were just trying to blow themselves up. And so Everlast just said, hey, I think I need my own manager. He came to me, and at that time I was PMP Street Promotions was a big deal. I wasn't much of a manager yet. I you know, had just really started, but he believed in me, and I had the relationship with Tommy Boy because, like I said, I was on retainer as a street promoter, so I could talk right to Tom Silverman or Monica Lynch more likely. And, you know, I sent it over to Monica, and they called me back like, wow, this is good, you know. And then at that time, Cypress's buzz was really starting in New York, so it was kind of easy to see like, oh, wow, this is like a white, Irish, like Cypress Hill thing. Like, okay, like, and Jump Around was on the demo. So, I mean, like, and to believe the labels passed on that is just unbelievable. But, yeah, Jump Around in the same state that you know right now was on that demo, and labels passed, so.
What was some of your best memories of during that time with the guys, managing those guys?
Oh, man, I mean, you know, the Pharcyde. My best memories of that era were managing the Pharcyde, because those guys were just hilarious, man. I mean, four comedians, you know, like, I mean, okay, when I was managing the Pharcyde, when I met the Pharcyde, they had a manager. His name was Reggie Andrews, and he's a great guy. He's from Watts High School, he's a teacher at Watts High School out here. He discovered Tyrese, and Imani went to that high school, Lock High. And so anyway, he was their manager, but he was an old school guy, and he didn't understand the new style that the Pharcyde was starting, because before they had been doing a more commercial thing that was up his alley, like an R&B rap thing. And then when they started the Pharcyde, he didn't get it. He wasn't with it. And so they needed somebody that understood it. And when I heard I heard Your Mama first live, actually, and I was just blown away. And so because, you know, they believed that I understood their vision, and they thought I could probably get them a deal and everything, they decided to roll with me as a manager. But he had been housing them in these apartments in Inglewood. So when they left him, he kicked them out. I mean, sure, I would have, you know. So then they all moved in with me, and I had a one-bedroom back house on Sunset and Highland, this little tiny place I just moved into. So I just remember like us just like late nights, them just bagging, just roasting on each other's mothers and this and that and that. And, you know, until we got the deal, you know, and it was just real exciting because Def Jam was coming around, different Jive, different labels were coming around. And it was pretty obvious that we were going to get like a deal. But, you know, we were still trying to figure out, you know, where it would be or who it'd be with or whatever.
Were you with the Delicious still at the Delicious Vinyl still at this point?
No,
okay.
I had left Delicious years ago. But, you know, it was like a great thing to come back to a place that gave me my first job and be like, hey, I got something great for you guys now, you know?
Right. What did you witness with those guys on their debut album, Bizarre Ride to the Pharcyde? What kind of creative process?
Oof. Well, I mean, I think the magic formula was Jay Swift and those four guys. Because, I mean, and there's great stuff on that second album for sure, too. But, I mean, I didn't work on the second album. But I mean, I think that first album, to me, is like, that's the epitome of the Pharcyde, you know, just to me anyway. And it was just an amazing project. But I think it was all of them together that really made it. You know what I mean? Like, some of the just like in Cold Chillin' days, the rappers were bringing this loop sometimes to Jay Swift, and he was freaking it. But, you know, Jay Swift was incredibly talented, incredibly creative. And you know, it was a fun era. It was a fun time. I mean, they were the reason that Delicious Vinyl ended up being the greatest. Yeah, thanks, man. Slick. That the artwork. That was the coolest thing I ever did, was bringing in Slick to do the album cover though for the Pharcyde though. Yeah, but you know, I think that it was the best decision that we ever did was going with Delicious Vinyl, was because and I heard Trey talking about this on your thing the other day, because probably no other label would have given them the creative freedom that they had at Delicious, and I'm assuming that's why it is a long time ago, so I'm trying to remember exactly the decision making process. But overall, the guys just felt comfortable with Delicious. You know, Delicious obviously understood what was cool about them from like a hip hop creative side, and these bigger labels, other labels, it was scary, you know, because there might be one person that understood you, signed you, but it's this whole machine of these other people, you know, and they're like some industry, like, you know, they're not underground hip hop fans, you know, they don't necessarily like understand anything, you know, about what we're about.
Right. So transitioning into the Lab Cabin in California, you weren't a part of that process?
No, I just worked with them on the whole first album.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you begin working with John Singleton?
Man, I was fortunate. I was DJing. I had gotten this gig to DJ on the set of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air TV show. So for the first like 5 seasons, I was the DJ on set. And that led to a couple other TV shows. And I was on set of one of those TV shows, and John came by to visit somebody on set. And he came over and he liked some records I was playing. He started talking to me, and he found I managed the Pharcyde, which he was a fan of. And at that time, I was doing marketing and promotion for Street Knowledge, for Ice Cube's label. And so he was like, that impressed him, obviously. And he was a friend of Cube's and everything, of course. And so I invited him to a showcase I was doing that we had the Wascals on, the Baby Pharcyde group, and some other unsigned groups that we were working with. And we sold it. I was at the Roxy. It was like sold out. And he came and he saw the event I put on. He was like, man. He's like, you're doing your thing. He's like, I want you to run my label and my new label and music supervise my movies. And I was just like, whoa. Like, those kind of opportunities don't like come to you every day, you know? So it was just an amazing opportunity. I mean, I was, you know, prepared. I did have a lot going on when he met me. And that's why, you know, he was looking obviously for his person, you know what I mean? John was such a music guy. You know, when he did Boys, he was such a new director. He was so young. He was still figuring everything out. He had so much success with that. So then he was kind of forming some of his team, some people that weren't on Boys, that he didn't quite have his music guy. So when he met me, he was like, yeah, you're going to be my music guy. You know, so yeah, it was incredible opportunity, right place, right time. But I was also prepared for it. You know, I had, you know, exciting stuff to tell him about when he met me, you know.
What was your duties for the Poetic Justice project?
Find John dope records. It was like A&Ring almost more than it was like music supervising. It was just like, go find me hot shit. Because back then, soundtracks were all about the songs that are not out yet. You know, being a part of a compilation that's going to be sold, and this is a big deal. You know, so you know, I went out there and I helped him get the Mr. Grimm Indo Smoke song. That's how I discovered Warren G. And, you know, the Tupac song that Warren produced that's on the soundtrack.
Dog Pound.
The nice, right, the Nice and Smooth song that's on there came through me. You know, I'm not responsible for every song on the soundtrack, but a bunch of them, you know. And just trying to help him find records that he believed in. It was the first project I ever music supervised, so I didn't really know much about it. And John used music supervisors different than most people anyway. Like I said, he kind of knew what he wanted. It's like, find me the hot shit. Let me hear it. If I like it, then, you know.
Right.
I'll figure out what to do with it in the movie and all that. I don't really need your help on that.
Right. You're credited a lot for Coolio's success. You mentioned DJ Aladdin. I imagine WC's in the picture somewhere. There's WC in the Mad Circle. Is this where Coolio, you guys first meet, or did Coolio just so happen to come to your office and you can finish the rest?
Totally WC. I was working for Street Knowledge. This is when I was at Street Knowledge. And this is how long, man, this is crazy. Ice Cube's label was in the Rolling 60s hood. It was in the hood. And WC was Ice Cube's hype man. And Coolio was WC's hype man. And so Dub came up to Street Knowledge, brought Coolio with him. Coolio saw my white ass down in the dungeon. They had this little basement they called the dungeon where I worked. And he just basically came up to me and said, you're going to be my manager. I don't really know what he saw in me exactly, but, you know, something. And he gave me a demo with the song County Line on it, which I thought was incredibly funky. The way Wino had flipped that Bar K sample kind of blew my mind. And, you know, I said, yeah, let's do it. And I started shopping him, and I got him what was a single deal with Tommy Boy, which turned into an EP deal, which turned into an album deal.
What did you witness with that album and the hypnotic track, Fantastic Voyage? What did that do for Coolio and yourself as well?
Oh, man, that was huge. I mean, that did so much for us. I mean, it was one of those first big pop West Coast kind of records. You know, there weren't that many of those things out yet. You know what I mean? So it was a big deal, and it made Coolio a big artist. And you know, I had all these relationships with people like Big Boy and stuff, and so we're able to get the records already, you know, performing. We're able to go straight to Big Boy, get on the radio and talk to him and all this kind of stuff and everything. And yeah, it was just a huge boost. I mean, Tommy Boy had believed in us and gave us the deal and everything, you know, and so it was just proof that, you know, because his first single didn't really react, you know.
Right.
So they spent a lot of money on that video. We hired an unknown director, F. Gary Gray, to do the video. And, you know, we got a lot of our friends like Be Real and Big Boy to do little cameos in the video and stuff, you know. But, yeah, I mean, I don't, you know, it was just really exciting. I mean, I hadn't really been involved in any records that were that big to that point.
Were you still involved with him with Gangsters Paradise?
Oh, yeah. I managed Coolio for the first 5 years of his career. They recorded Gangsters Paradise in my house, basically my living room. There was a little tiny studio. The producer, Doug Rashid, was my roommate. And we had some people over that day, and LV was over, and he sang the hook. And then Coolio came, and he heard that, and they finished it that day very fast. And, you know, ironically, I sent it to Tommy Boy. This was in between, you know, the first album, Fantastic Voyage, and the second album. They're like, yeah, it's cool. We're not really crazy about it. I said, okay, how about I try to get it on a soundtrack? They said, yeah, that sounds great. Wow. And then, you know, and the other crazy part about the soundtrack thing is I only knew 2 music supervisors at that time. And what was crazy was they both wanted to use the song. And one of them was for Bad Boys. One of them was the music supervisor on Martin Lawrence, you know, Will Smith film Bad Boys. And both the films were being produced by the huge producers Simpson and Bruckheimer. So they wouldn't do like a bidding war against each other. So they made a very high offer for the song. And they said, this is it. You pick the movie. And the woman at MCA that was working on The Dangerous Minds was just so obsessed. I could just tell she was going to promote it harder, and so we went with her.
Very dope. You mentioned how you met Warren G through the Mr. Grimm song Indo Smoke. Take me back to sitting with Warren G and listening to his demo.
Yeah, this is a funny story for sure. I have been spending a lot of time in the Death Row studios trying to get that Dog Pound song. At first, it was supposed to be a Snoop song, but this was before Snoop's first album had dropped, and that was the most highly anticipated rap album of all time. So, and like Jimmy Iovine, you know, said that ain't happening. So, and when Dre delivered the Dog Pound song, it was so dope, and it had this Bobby Womack sample in it, and then that didn't clear. And then he didn't really want to redo it. Like, he was already rich, and, you know, so I spent a lot of time kind of like up there trying to bug him, kind of like trying to be in his face, like, can you redo the song for John, you know, and all this, you know, and in that time I got to know everybody pretty good, you know, and one day Warren was like, one day I was up there and I hadn't been warned yet. I think he's like, hey, cuz, I got my own stuff. And I said, okay, you know, and I was always eager. And so we went out to my Ford Explorer truck. And this is kind of famous story. He puts the tape in. And I hear the first verse to the hook, you know, really fast. I just eject it. And he's looking at me crazy. He's looking at me like I'm really disrespecting him by like ejecting his tape after 30 seconds of his fire ass, you know, Indo Smoke song. And I was like, this is so dope. Like, you know, we're going to put this on the soundtrack. This is happening. And he's looking at me like, oh, this motherfucker's just blowing smoke on my ass. He's just trying to like get out of here. You know, he's trying to rush me out of his car. And then I called him later with John, and he was, you know, he was blown away. You know, so it was amazing. I mean, Warren, if you've seen his documentary, was going through hard times at that time. He had been disrespected by Death Row after so many contributions to the Chronic. I mean, if you think about it, without Warren, there's no Snoop, there's no Nate, there's no Corrupt, there's no Daz, there's no Chronic. And he wasn't a part of the movement. They had cut him out because he wouldn't sign the contract Suge gave him without having it looked at. Right. And so it was a hard time for Warren. And Warren he had tape on his glasses. He had a bucket. I mean, he could leave that shit running. I mean, you know, it could out. He had to leave it running, but it wasn't a problem because nobody wanted to steal it. You know, if you turn it off, it wasn't going to start again. But no, so Warren was going through hard times, and it was just amazing because this is why Snoop fucks with me so much, because very quickly he went from that to all of a sudden having a big deal with Def Jam, getting a big fat check, and very quickly his music coming out and being exposed too. You know, so it was quite a thing. It was you know, it's very exciting, and seeing in retrospect what was going on with Warren, because I didn't even know all that at the time, is like really heavy. You know, think about what he had been through. You know,
right. You're the man credited for taking him over to Def Jam. Is that correct?
Yes.
Tell me how that process happened. Was that the first and only label you took him to?
Yeah, because I wasn't even shopping him. What happened was I had like 25 VHS tapes of the Indo Smoke video, and I was sending them out to my like top 25 hip hop VIPs or whatever, you know, like people that worked for The Source and stuff like that. And Chris Lighty, Baby Chris, was on my list. That was my homie. I had met him when he was working with the Jungle Brothers when I was at a new music seminar. And so I sent it to Chris Lighty. And Chris Lighty calls me back. Like I said, I was just promoting the Indo Smoke video. We weren't even thinking about shopping Warren as an artist. Warren wasn't thinking about shopping himself as an artist. More looking at himself as a producer. We're all looking at Warren as a producer. And Def Jam, to their credit, you know, especially Chris, to his credit, calls me and says, "Hey, who's the guy in the third verse?" "Oh, that's Warren G. Snoop's DJ, Dr. Dre's brother." Next thing I know, Russell Simmons is calling me, and they want to sign him.
Wow. At this time, Def Jam's not doing too well, are they?
No, Def Jam had a long run of some bricks. Yeah, I mean, Russell and other people have credited that with saving Def Jam. You know, they had missed the whole West Coast movement. They had been signing some pretty corny shit from back east. It was right before, you know, Murder Inc. and Jay-Z and you know, but it was after all the like big runs of Public Enemy and Slick Rick and all, you know what I mean? And Death Row had came out and just crushed them, and they had put out some very questionable kind of poppy stuff that hadn't popped and some other things, and yeah, so it was a huge deal for Def Jam.
What was your relationship like earlier on with Russell and Leor? They ended up giving you a West Coast operation. Is that to bring music there, or to gather up?
As soon as I sent them Warren G, they wanted to get in business with me, and so they were talking to me, and I remember I asked my lawyer, I said, "What should I tell them?" He said, "Tell me you want a label." I said, "They're not gonna give me a label. They're gonna give you a label." And so I said, "I want my own label." They said, "Okay." Wow, you know, so I was shocked because at that time, you gotta understand, like Coolio hadn't come out yet. Pharcyde was the only group I was really credited with, and they only had they were still smaller. It was still kind of buzzing. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't that big. It wasn't gold or anything like that. And you know, Warren had sold 0 records. You know what I mean? So, but they believed in me, and at first, and for a while, the relationship was very strong. Leor thought I was his great white hype. Russell loved that I was getting him like in the West Coast game. You know what I mean? And you know, I was obviously a huge fan of all the early Def Jam music and everything. So I had a lot of reverence for those guys. You know what I mean? And I learned a lot working with them for sure.
Right.